Welcome back to my little channel. Today I'm going to address the YouTube hashtag, well, basically the YouTube version of hashtag notall. I mean, yeah, okay, they use something else than hashtag notall. They use hashtag MoreThanARefugee, but the thing is that they're right. Not all. There are refugees that are good people. There are, however, also refugees who are not. And the problem with the current refugee crisis is not the refugees that are good. The problem is the refugees that are not. One step worse than that, the problem isn't even the refugees that are not being good guests or good people. No, the problem is Western civilization and Western media and Western politicians demanding of its citizen to accept refugees, even if those refugees misbehave. Look at Sweden. They've grown as rape capital of, well, the world really, but at the same time, you are not allowed to criticize refugees. Refugees in refugee camps get attacked by other refugees, but that's not a big deal. People get killed by refugees, but that's not a big deal. Refugees create havoc in certain areas of the country, but that's not a big deal. But people saying, maybe we need to do something about this refugee crisis, that's a big deal. So yeah, in a rather sick way, we see that the refugees in Sweden, not all, but a lot of them, are indeed more than a refugee. Some of them are rapists. This doesn't happen only in Sweden though. We see this just about everywhere in Europe. With the refugees, we also bring in a lot of problems. And this is, to me, a real issue. Because I want the refugees to be able to come here and get safe and fair shelter. But the thing is, refugees have to fear refugees. And we're not even to address that. So yeah, some are more than a refugee. Some are arsons. And even if the refugees do not go to refugee camps, they are not creating a safe space around them. For example, we saw this when refugees en masse entered countries like Hungary, and the way they then responded to people trying to give them help. For example, police officers trying to give them food or water. But they refused it because it's not what they want. Well, wait a second. You're a refugee. You're a beggar. How can you worry about what you want? Don't you need water to survive? And they get food packages and they complain because it has the symbol of the Red Cross on it. They haven't even seen what's in it. They already don't want it. These are refugees too. So I'm not even sure what funny name I should give these guys. And in Europe, a lot of refugees want to go either to Germany, Sweden, or Great Britain. So they meet up to go to Great Britain in what's now known as the jungle of Calais, which has been removed once, but it's slowly returning. Even here, the local French people are trying to help the refugees. But the refugees don't want their help. I mean, some food is nice, some food they don't want, they just throw it away. I think I do know that these people are more than a refugee. These people are very ungrateful. And worst of all, among the refugees there are, let's say, too many terrorists that came. They were announced that they would come, that came to sow terror in Europe. And unfortunately, the countries that are trying their hardest to help the refugees are repaid by a huge increase of terroristic activity. Funny enough, the countries that are really fighting hard not to take in any refugees from the Middle East see that their countries are not really touched by terrorism. Funny how that goes, because this would mean that they're not all, of course, but some are more than a refugee. Some are terrorists. And if all the things I've mentioned so far aren't strange enough when we talk about refugees, we now see that there are refugees that came to Europe, and once they've gotten the money and some security from the country they are in, they go on holiday to the country they fled from. So yeah, I guess you're right. Some are more than a refugee. Some are tourists. Now, if we look at Sweden again, in 2015 Sweden had 162, almost 163,000 applications, requests for asylum. Roughly 50,000 of them actually got a decision, and out of those 50,000, 32,000 were allowed to stay. But it's difficult, or rather impossible, to find out what happened with the people that did not get a positive decision. And out of the 30,000 that were allowed to stay in 2015, only about 10,000 asked for a work permission. And it's impossible for me to find the numbers of how many of them actually found work. Now, I have seen numbers as low as 500, but I can't find fair confirmation on that. So I will name them because I'm a bastard, but I can't confirm them, so don't believe it. At the other side though, 10,000 refugees want to work out of the 32 that are allowed to stay. Another fine statistic, out of the 163,000 refugees that came to Sweden in 2015, 115,000 of them were male. That's more than 2/3 of all the refugees. Where are the women and children? But you know what? You're right. They're more than a refugee. They're a burden on the welfare system. I really wanted to end this video with success stories of refugees in Europe, because there is more to a refugee than all the things I named before. There are refugees out there that really came to Europe to find safety. There are refugees out there that detest the bullshit that is happening here. As I showed earlier, refugee camps destroyed by refugees. Trust me, in that refugee camp there were also people who did not want to see their camp destroyed. And when we saw in 2016's New Year's Eve event in Cologne and in other major cities in Germany, we saw refugees protesting and asking the police and the judges to come down hard on the criminals that did this. Unfortunately, I cannot find those things. I've used them in the past, so I know they exist, but I couldn't find them. I'm sorry. My computer died not too long ago, so I've unfortunately lost those pages. Trust me, they are there. There are good refugees out there. So some people are more than a refugee. Some people are actually in need of our protection. But we can't protect them because we deny the fact that so many of the refugees are criminals. And they don't only hurt the Western world. They hurt the refugees that came here to find refuge as well. Shame on you, YouTube, for trying to make it sound better than it is. Yes, there are good refugees amongst the people, Sorry, no. Yes, there are good people amongst the refugees, but they need our help to make sure that they don't fall victim to the same idiots the rest of us fall victim to. And by claiming that, oh, well, there's more to a refugee than just blah, blah, blah. Of course there is more to a refugee than just blah, blah, blah. These are also people. There is always more to a person than what meets the eye. But we need to be able to discuss this openly, fairly, and call a spade a spade. Criminals need to be addressed. We cannot have it that we have criminal refugees that get a slap on the wrist when they do something terrible because, well, they're refugees. Because that doesn't only show that we don't protect our own, it also shows we don't protect the refugees that actually come here for help. This pisses me off a little bit, YouTube. More than a refugee, people are way more than a refugee. But what real refugees are is mostly looking for help. And by letting in the refugees that are not refugees, we're not helping the ones that are. Anyway, like, share and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Criticism, as always, is more than welcome. And I look forward to your comments.